The broadcast is now in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, very good morning. Hope you're all doing fine. So first of all, many thanks for joining us on our workshop. I thank you so much for spending your time in registering during your busy schedule because your participation means a lot to us here at Manage Engine. So we, the AD Solutions team, hope to make sure that this session is going to be valuable and you will gain something out of it. I welcome you all for today's session on ADManager Plus. So I hope that my voice is audible and the screen is well and clear. If not, kindly let us know through the chat. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Anu and I'm your presenter for the day. So I'm pretty sure that you all know about this series of AD Manager Plus workshop. This is workshop number 3, the third of the 5 workshops that we are conducting this month. One workshop every week Tuesday at the same time. So last 2 weeks we were looking on user management. We discussed about user provisioning and user account modifications without any complex scripts. So we were looking on easy ways with which you can make tasks as an administrator very much easier with the help of AD Manager Plus. So this week on workshop number 3, we will be discussing about Active Directory delegation and help desk business workflow. So when I say delegation, you can delegate certain tasks to your HR or your network administrators. Say for example, you want your IT technician to reset password and you do not want that technician to create any user account or modify any user account. So you can have all that delegation using AD Manager Plus. And in business workflow, you will learn on how you can set a standardized structure for your organization. Say for example, you can make your task related to Active Directory administration to follow a request approval and execution pattern. Okay, so having said that, let me quickly share with you the agenda for the day. So by the end of the session, you will get to know on how you can enforce attribute level restriction for error-free account creation or modification as per organizational policies. Say for example, you do not want your IT technician to modify any Exchange attributes or any Office 365 attributes. So you can enforce it using AD Manager Plus. And also you can create a customized user management console for your HR executives and your branch heads so that they can create and manage their team accounts. And also you can enforce restriction on for administrators so that say for example an administrator in your Middle East account do not want to modify or create any user account in London location, so you can enforce such restrictions using AD Manager Plus. And also you will get to know how you can have ticket-based execution of Active Directory tasks with multi-level workflow. So when I say Active Directory workflow, so say you wouldn't want your network administrator or your HR people to perform user provisioning or modifying accounts without the approval of managers, then you can follow a pattern of request approval and execution. So how do I achieve that? So I'll tell you how. Say for example, instead letting your administrator perform some Active Directory task, say your HR wants to create a user account in Active Directory. Instead giving in permission to create a user account directly in Active Directory, you can configure him as a requester in AD Manager Plus so that they can raise any request regarding Active Directory task using the application, and it gets forwarded to the next level for approval where you as an administrator can review it, can make a comment on it and approve and execute if you feel it valid. If you do not feel it valid, then you can straight away decline that request. Okay, is there anything else that the workflow supports? Yes, there are few more options that the application supports. For example, if you have any create user account request, Say for example, your HR people have created a user creation request, then it should automatically be assigned to a specific IT technician. So you can configure it using assigning rules in ADManager Plus. And also you can configure who should be notified, when they should be notified, and with what message using notification rules. So you can have auto assign tickets to right technician and track their progress through email. So now without any further delay, let me take you to the application. So if you have already configured ADManager Plus, then you can very well make use of it. For those who have not configured ADManager Plus, then I will share the URL for the test lab that we have set up and hosted online. So kindly look at the chat window for the URL. The URL for the test lab is admp.cloudnet.app. Sorry, the URL for the test lab is cloudapp.net. Okay, I will also be sharing the credential with which you can log into the application. The username for logging into the application is ADMP and the password is password at 123 with P capitalized. So kindly log into workshop domain, not the ADManager Plus authentication. Kindly log into workshop domain. So I hope you all have logged in. Let me log in as well. Okay, so now I'm logging into the application. So as you all know that when you log into the application, you will be welcomed with the product dashboard. So as you can see, this application has a lot more options that you can make use of for making your task related to Active Directory administration very easier. So last week we were focusing on AD management. So we were seeing on how you can create a single user so that from a single console you can mention the Exchange attributes or Office 365 attributes without having to toggle between multiple windows. And also we were looking on how you can create users in bulk, say for example, without having to use any complex script or any VB scripts. So you can create user accounts so easily with the help of ADMP. So, okay. So in user management, you can have a various range of options. Say for example, you can reset password, you can unlock user accounts, you can modify group membership, or you can modify exchange attributes. And also we were looking on how you can make use of templates when you create user accounts. So this week it will be more on AD delegation and workflow. So in the first half of today's session, we will be focusing on Active Directory delegation. So when I say delegation, it means that you can create a customized task related to your Active Directory and you can have them assigned to your IT technician. So you can you can securely delegate certain roles to the users in your Active Directory environment. Say for example, you as an administrator may want to grant certain user management permission to a particular user from your organization. So how can you do it? I'll tell you how you can perform all these things very easily and securely using ADManager Plus. So as a first step, let me create a role. So roles are nothing but the actions that you are going to assign to your technicians. So I'm going to create a role for my IT technician. So you can see an option help desk roles under AD delegation tab. So kindly click on help desk roles. So it will take you to a console where you can see a list of roles that have been created, and also there are some predefined roles that the application offers you. So either you can make use of these roles or you can create a new role. So I'm going to create a new role. So click the create new role option that you can see on the right side of the screen. So when you click create new role, you have the option to choose all the attributes or all the customization you want to provide for this role. So I'm going to name this role as IT role, I mean IT role. So I'm going to make this role very simple. So I'm going to provide permission for creating users, for modifying users. When I say modification, it branches down to several options. Say for example, you can reset password, you can make changes in group attributes, that is you can modify the group membership, you can unlock users, you can move or you can even delete your user accounts. In a similar way, you can even manage your Exchange and terminal services attributes. So I'm just going to give permission for creating a single user. So if you want to deny this role for creating bulk users, then you can simply remove this checkbox. And also you can have finer level of restriction. Say for example, when you give permission for this role as address and organization attributes, you can further decide what are all the attributes that this role will have permission to. Say for example, if you do not want this role to modify department or company attributes, then you can simply deselect them. And also, as I said earlier, you can provide attribute level restriction for your user accounts. So you have an option called user attribute privileges. So when you click user attribute privileges, you will have a pop-up, so where you can decide what are all the attributes that this role is going to have. Say for example, when you do not want this role to modify any of terminal services attributes, then you can simply deselect them. So in a similar way, if you do not want to modify Office 365 or Exchange attributes, then you can go ahead and select the customization you want to give for this role. Okay, now I'm done with selecting my attributes. Let me click OK. So in a similar way, you can decide whether this role will have support to other objects in your Active Directory, say computer or contact or any other objects. In a similar way, when you want this role to generate some reports, then you can simply go ahead and select the users that you want to have this role, have permission for this role. So I'm just going to make this role simple. So I'm just going to provide only user management permissions. So I'm done with creating my role. And also if you think this role should not have permission to import any CSV file, then you can very well go ahead and select this checkbox, deny CSV import. Okay, now I'm done with creating my role. Let me click save role. So when you give save role, this role will be saved and you can see it listed in the list of roles that are supported in ADManager Plus. So now how do I map this role with a technician? You can see Help Desk Technicians tab under AD Delegation. So click Help Desk Technician. So this will give you the UI where you can see all the technicians that are configured in ADManager Plus. So you in a similar way, you can also create a technician that you want to provide access to. So go to Help Desk Technicians. There you can have option to to add a new technician. So you have an option called Add New Technician on the right side of the screen. So you can see that when you go to Help Desk Technicians tab, this will list you all the technicians that has been configured by your network administrator. And also by default, ADManager Plus provides some built-in technicians too. So when you want to add a new technician, click on Add New Technician. So you can select the domain from which you are going to select the user from. And you have an option called Select AD User. Click the plus icon. So when you click this plus icon, this will open a pop-up that will list you all the users from your domain. So this will list you all the users that are present in my domain workshop.admanagerplus.com. Okay, now my users have been listed. You can very well choose the user from this list, or you can go ahead and search for the technician. But before that, let me give you another option. So you have an option called filter by groups. So when you click filter by groups, all the groups present in your domain will be listed so that you can have bulk technicians being created in your ADManager Plus. So you can just select the group from the list. You can just select the group from your domain and you can just click on a get users button. That will list you all the users in the domain. You can just select the user you want to make them as a technician. So now I'm going to make IT Tech as my technician and click OK. So now I want to map the role that I've created recently to this technician. So you have an option, select help desk roles. When you click this plus icon, this will list you all the roles that you have seen under help desk roles. So either you can select n number of roles to be associated with this technician, or you can just select any one of these role. So I'm going to select IT role that I've just created and map this to my technician. So this is a kind of end-to-end mapping. Say for example, you can have n number of roles being associated to n number of technicians. So as I say, for this IT technician, you can have 2 to 3 roles, n number of roles being associated. And in the similar way, for this IT role, I can have some technicians being mapped with this role. So I'm just going to select IT role. I'm going to save this. So now my technician has been added. So what are we waiting for? So let's go and check how the user management console will look for this technician. Let me sign out and then log in with the technician that I've configured just now. So when you log out, you can see the login page. So I'm going to enter the technician username and the password and log into my application. So when you log into the application, now you can see the difference how the user console looked when I log in with the default technician admin. When I logged in with default technician admin, I had the option where I had many other options. I can generate reports, I can go and configure AD delegation, and I can configure workflow and all that. But since I've configured only user management permissions for this technician, I can see only those options listed here. So I was telling you, if from the beginning that you can enforce attribute level restriction. So how do I do that? Let me tell you how. So let me sign out and then let me log in with the default technician, admin. Okay, so let me log in with default technician. So later on, if you, in a previous session, in the previous step, we were just configured user management permission for that user account. So later on, if you want to elevate that permission in the role, how do I do that? So just go to AD delegation tab. So there you can see option for modifying your technician and modifying your roles. So first let me elevate the permissions for the role. So let me go to help desk roles and then that will list all the roles that have been configured. Let me go to IT role. Okay, this will give me the options that I've selected previously. So now I want to elevate the permission for this role for contact objects too. So I will make this role to create contacts too. Okay, let me save this role. So how do I provide a restriction for this? So I've created the user account previously. So I want to provide restriction based on location. Say for example, the user account, the technician that I added previously should not have access to all the OUs present in your domain. I just want him to have access to only one location. So I'll tell you how you can do that. Please go to help desk technicians. So there you have an option to edit this technician. So I'm going to edit IT technician. So you can see all the properties of this technician. There you can see an option called select OUs. Just click on add OUs. So now I am going to delegate permission for this user account only for a single OU. So when I click add OUs, this will open a pop-up that will list me all the OUs present in the domain. So say for example, I want to delegate. So when you do not provide any technician any OUs by default, then this technician will have access to all the OUs present in your domain. So now I'm going to make this technician have access only to employees Middle East OU. Click OK. So in the similar way, you can select what are all the templates that this technician have access to. So in a similar way, if you think this technician should not modify or should not add members in any of the groups, say for example, he does not have permission to modify domain admin groups, then you can just add domain admin groups in excluded groups. Okay, so what is this thing called impersonate as admin? So suppose that this IT technician does not have permission to create users in Active Directory, then you can just give him a proxy address. Say for example, when you select this checkbox impersonate as admin, the credentials that you have given while you configure the domain in this ADManager Plus, you can the credentials that you give under domain settings, this application will use that credential to manage or to manipulate any operations in your Active Directory. But also I can make you sure that this permission will not be reflected in Active Directory. So this permission will be reflected only in ADManager Plus. So now I'm done with the changes. Let me click Save Changes. So now I've just provided a location level restriction and I've elevated the role with permission for for creating contacts. So now let me log out and check whether these changes have been reflected or not. So let me sign out and log in with this technician once again. So I just have to make sure whether these changes have been updated or not. So let me log in with this technician. Now you must see the OU level restriction. So you can see that I've elevated the role with contact permissions to create contact. So that permission has been added to this technician. So just go to create single user that you can see under user management category. So when you create a single user, by default under system template, you can see the select container option being selected to users container. Since I have just restricted this user account, this technician, to only employees Middle East, then this select container by default have been selected to the OU employees Middle East. When you click this pencil icon, this will open a pop-up that will list you all the OUs in the domain. So you can see that now the rest of the OUs have been restricted for this user account. Only employees Middle East has been given permission for this user account. Okay, so now we have seen how you can create a role, create a customized task for your IT technicians or your HR people. And also we have seen how you can configure a technician to ADManager Plus. Okay, what else this AD delegation provides? So there are a few more options that Active Directory delegation offers you. For example, if a user account has been created in your domain, you want to verify who created it. So where do I see that? Under AD delegation tab, you have an option called audit reports. So when you go to audit reports, there you can find all the details that you want to know. Say for example, who created this user account, who modified, who initiated this process, and what operation has been done on what object. So you can also get to know on at what time this action has been done. So whether it has been successfully modified or it encountered an error. You can have all these options under audit reports. In a similar way, you can also schedule these reports to be exported or to be mailed to you, and you can configure all these options under schedule reports. So this audit report is limited to Active Directory operations. So when you want to know who created a technician or who modified a technician, or you want to know who elevated the permissions for a role, then you have a report named Admin Audit Reports. So there you can find all the details like who created a role or who created a technician, and you can see whether it has been created or modified. So you have all these options under Admin Audit Reports. So now we have entered into the second half of the session. So we will be looking into workflow, business workflow. So workflow is nothing but where you can configure the request, the request approval and execution pattern. So basically, you can define what order of execution your organization wants to follow for each administrative task. Say for example, you do not want your HR people to create a user account directly in Active Directory. Instead, you can make them raise a request for creating a user account, and then you as an administrator can review and execute that request. So you can edit this workflow. You can either make it simple or you can have all these options. So the first thing is you will have a requester. He is the one who raises a request for a particular action. So, and the next one is the reviewer. So he is the one who evaluates the pros and cons of the request, and you can configure that too. So who can be the reviewer? By default, the admin can be the reviewer. And the next one is approver. So he is the one who holds the authority for approving a request that was raised. And the next thing is executors. So he is the one who actually executes the action. He is the one who is responsible for completing the task in Active Directory. So I'm just going to make it simple. So I'm going to have a requester in my workflow, a reviewer, and an executor. Okay, let me save this configuration. So as a first step, like we have configured technicians in under AD delegation, you can configure requesters. So you can design you can decide who are all going to be the requesters. Say for example, I'm going to make a HR people as requester so that he can have he can have permission only to raise requests and not do any operations directly in Active Directory. So go to request us that you can see under workflow. So go to request us tab. So like you configure a technician under AD delegation, you can also configure a new requester. Click add new requester. So this browse option under select requester will open a pop-up that will show all the users present in your domain. So you can choose any of your users. You can configure any of your users as a requester. Okay. So like we like we configured a technician. So I'm going to configure a a requester too. Okay. Okay. Let me go ahead and select. Let me go ahead and choose the requester once again. Okay. Now this will list all the users from my domain. You like you did in under AD delegation tab, you can very well go ahead and search for the users and then pick up the requesters. You can just straight away select the requesters from the list here. Okay, I think there's some problem in getting the response from the server. Let me once again check with this. Okay, so let me go ahead and choose the technician. So I'm going to make a HR people as a requester. So I'm going to just search for my user. So it will be, my user will start with the name HR. So you can very well go ahead and search for the user. Now this will list me all the users starting with the name HR. Now the search operation is being done on your Active Directory, so you can have only the list of users whose name starts with HR, or you can just select any of the users from this list. Okay, so my user is HR user 1 and click OK. So like you selected a role for technician, you can also select a role for requester. So I'm going to make this requester have only user creation access. So let me give user creation and click OK. So like you created a role, so you can also create a requester roles here. So I'll show you how, but before that, let me save this requester. So now this has been added and you can see it in the list of requesters here. So go to requesters roles, like how you created a role for your technician, ADManager plus technician, you can also create a role for requester. So by default, ADManager Plus provides several roles, or you can configure a new role. Go to create new role. So you can name it with what you want. So say for example, it's going to be a HR role, and he has permission for only creating users. So you can go and save this role. So now let me log in as a requester and let me show you how you can raise a request in using ADManager Plus. Okay, let me sign out and then let me log in with this requester. My requester name is HR user 1. So let me log in with this requester. So I'm going to raise a request. So make sure that your username and password is right. Okay, so let me try logging in again. So, okay, I think my password is wrong. So let me show you how you can create a request even with a default technician. So your admin, the default technician can, by default, is your requester and your executor. So let me go to workflow. There you can see there you have an option called create request. So go to create request. So where you can create a request for single user creation. So click single user creation. You just have to fill in the basic details of the user account that you are going to create in Active Directory. So when you click single user creation, this will give you a UI where you can just fill in the details and not worry about any of the LDAP names or anything. So I'm just going to name this user account as John. I'm going to name this user account as John. If you want, you can choose the container in which this user account should reside, and you can also configure any other attributes. Say for example, you can configure the password, his group membership, and his account properties, and his exchange properties, and all that. So let me type in the password. So make sure that this meets the password complexity of the domain. So now I've just filled in the basic detail for this user account and let me create the request. Okay, so importantly, you can set the priority for this request. If you want this process to be done immediately, you can set the priority to high. And also you have to enter the subject, say for example, user for finance department. So I am going to create this user account for finance department so that I can name the subject as user for finance. So let me create the request by hitting create request button. So So now my request has been sent to the sent for approval. Okay, go to workflow tab. So in workflow tab, you can see all the requests that has been raised by your requesters. So under workflow tab, you have an option named all requests. So under all requests, so this will list you all the requests you have that has been raised by your requesters. So I have raised a request for user creation under the subject user for finance. So let me go. You can just go ahead and review this. So when you click on this user for finance link, you can just go ahead and see what this request actually does in Active Directory. So say for example, I want to review it. So you can very well go and review it. So first let me check the task name is going to be create user, and we have selected the template as system template. And if you want to check what are all the properties that you have you have configured for this user creation process, then you can just click view objects button. So if you feel that this request is valid, then you can very well review it and you can give a comment on it. So say for example, since if you feel that this request is valid, then just go to all request under workflow. Then you can very well choose this request, and you have the option called review. So just go ahead and click review. You can very well add comment for it. So say for example, the request is valid, you can just comment it as request is valid and click OK. So when you click OK, this means that you have reviewed this request. So the next process is you have to execute this operation. So how do I do that? So you have an option, you have a button like execute. If you feel it valid, you can execute it, or if you feel it is not valid, you can go ahead and reject this request. So let me go ahead and execute this request. So it's a user creation process. In the same way, you can add any comments for that too. User creation, I've just commented and click OK. So now this process has been executing. So now this user account is being created in your Active Directory. So as a result, you can see whether, the message for this process will be shown in the UI. So if it is successfully created in your Active Directory, then you can very well see the success message here. Or if you have happened to encounter any error, then you can see the error code and the exact message with which this request or this operation has encountered the failure. So now this process is being executed in your Active Directory. So it may take some time, since this application, your ADManager Plus server may have to contact your domain controller and then initiate the process of creating the user. So once it is done, you can see the message. So it's being executed. So let me just go ahead. So let this process happen. Let me go ahead and sign in once again as another user. Okay. Let me wait for the completion of this process. So this may be due to your network failure or your server may be down. So you can have any reason for this delay. So now you can go to your workflow tab. So as I said earlier, you can have some assigning rules and notification rules to be configured using ADManager Plus. Say for example, whenever a create user request has been raised, then it has to be assigned to a particular technician. So you have an option called assigning rules. So under workflow, you can see an option called assigning rules. When you go to that link, you can have all those customization you want. So as I said, I'm going to configure a rule where I will decide what technician to execute a particular request. So go to assigning rules. So there you can create a new rule. So this will give you a UI that in that you can create a new rule for your workflow. So you can just click add new rule. So I'm going to enter the new rule name as user creation rule. So what criteria this user creation rule will have? So whenever the action is a user creation, you can see the option as create users, or you can even decide what the action that you want to select here. So whenever the action is create user, so I'm going to assign it to a particular technician, say for example, IT tech. So this will list you all the technicians that you have configured in ADManager Plus. So now I'm going to create a rule. So whenever the action is user creation, I'm going to assign it to HR associate. Okay. So you can even set the priority, whether it is normal or high or it is low. So it's totally up to you. So whenever a request is created, then you can have it assigned to a particular technician. So let me save this rule now. Okay, now my rule is being saved. In a similar way, you have an option called notification rules. So, for example, whenever a request is created, you have to notify a particular technician. Say, for example, whenever a request is created, you want to notify a technician named IT Tech or your HR associate or any other technician configured in your ADManager Plus. Then you can very well go ahead and choose the technician. So say, for example, you whenever a request is being created, you want to notify admin IT India technician. So you can add the email ID for this user account. So say for example, admin IT India at workshop.com. Okay, now I can say you can even customize the message that you want to give. Like whenever a mail is being sent, and you can customize the message. Say for example, a new with the action title. This is a naming format. For those who have attended the previous session would have known what a naming format is. So when you give it like this, so it will take the action name and this will be replaced here. For example, I created an action user for finance. So a new a new user for finance request has been created. In the similar way, you can configure the message that you want to send and you want to notify through email for your technicians. So, okay, we have come to the end of the session. So, we have seen how you can delegate tasks to your IT technicians or your HR or your network administrators. And also, we have seen how you can configure business workflow using ADManager Plus. So for next week on workshop number 4, we will be discussing about PowerShell free reporting and efficient Active Directory accounts and group membership and NTFS permissions management. So thank you so much for your participation today. So thank you so much for your patience and during your busy schedule. So because your participation means a lot to us. So after this session gets over, you will receive a survey form. So kindly go through the survey form. It will just take about 2 minutes to fill your views about this session because that will help us improve a lot. Thank you so much for registering and your participation. Have a good day.